In discussing how sea level affects our communities, it's difficult to point to, I think, one isolated incident because there's so many situations that occur with rains and flooding and closing roads. But I do recall Hurricane Sandy and the impact on Plum Island, which is part of Newburyport. We had a water main break at 4:30 in the morning out on the island, which is very challenging conditions, and not that that necessarily had anything to do with Hurricane Sandy. It just was a problem with infrastructure that happened to occur during a major storm. We ended up having a very, very close watch of houses that time and time again during storms we go and disconnect utilities and get ready for the worst in terms of houses falling into the Atlantic Ocean. Fortunately, that didn't happen with Sandy, but there were lots of roads that were closed. There were docks in our downtown that were floating like Lego wraps, just all over the place. We had a large ship that was supposed to be sold and was bouncing like a rowboat. So for us, it became very clear to me that we needed to develop first a real comprehensive emergency management team that met prior to any event that was coming if we had enough notice. And that's been a very successful process because we're well prepared in terms of dealing with what's coming our way in terms of any type of natural disaster. And that continues to this day. And in addition, longer term planning. You have to bring people together. We have a storm surge group. We have just recently had the EPA in with NOAA and FEMA and MEMA and Coastal Zone Management working for a 2-day workshop making assessments of our flood risks and helping us begin to set a roadmap for us to move forward. I think one of the difficulties is educating the public, for them to understand that this is serious and we have to really start planning for the future of our communities. For example, 3 years ago in March, we had a no-name storm that came in with torrential flooding in a very short period of time. Yet that was out on Plum Island where they were getting hit worse, and we were downtown. And I was surprised when I got the call that I better get out to Plum Island. When I arrived, 4 houses had been pulled into the Atlantic Ocean. By the time all was said and done, another 13 were condemned. And this was Newbury as opposed to Newburyport. Plum Island is made up of 2 communities, but they always say 2 zip codes, 1 mayor. And we run the water and sewer system out there. So that was one situation where it was just a storm that we weren't preparing. We didn't anticipate to come. And then this past winter, we had 10 feet of snow in the course of 5 weeks. And we lost our sewer system out on Plum Island for 3.5 weeks. We couldn't get people on or off the island. There's only one road causeway because of whiteout conditions. People had no water or sewer. It was pretty horrific. Well, I think this was wonderful to start with the ZBA grant and begin to bring people together but these were the experts. These are people who are participating in our Merrimack River Beach Alliance, which represents 3 communities, been dealing with erosion and dune nourishment, and people who are aware of what we've been dealing with in terms of, we just finished repairing our jetties. So we need help in terms of educating the public, getting information out, and bringing people together to work with us around infrastructure and what makes sense for us as we build towards the river and on Plum Island, to help us design zoning and master planning that makes sense for our future. It was interesting for me sitting around during the morning introductions, listening to each of the mayors and other officials talking about and describing their geographic communities. And each is so different in terms of rivers or on the ocean or a barrier island and despite the geographic descriptions, we're all faced with the same issues: protecting the future of our infrastructure, being prepared for these types of events, and having the appropriate emergency responses, having the right resources, and finding out what other communities have done that have been successful. As you look at New Jersey, New York, and their response post-Sandy, and what have they done in terms of their rebuilding and the designs? Are there things that a community like Newburyport can learn from those communities who've had pretty much broader and significant impacts than a community like Newburyport? But that's not to say it won't happen down the road.
So is it fair to characterize
What also is significant about this event today is the fact that there are Republicans and Democrats from all over the country, and we have to blur those boundaries. This has to stop being politicized. It's not. These are our homes, our communities, places where we all live, together. And most municipalities are nonpartisan. So we have to stop that at a state and a federal level to ensure that we are all working collaboratively, whether it's regionally, statewide, or at a federal level to address these issues. I think you start with a conversation and you give concrete examples, and then you have to direct people to research. I mean, it's all there. I mean, it's incredible to me that people are still in denial when you have, NOAA and NASA and these groups of scientific journals who are doing peer review of others' research and studies, and they're all confirming and supporting where we are in this path we are on. So let's stop questioning and let's start working together.